Alright, we're back once again at the Mighty Dragoon, getting into week number 5. I'm gonna get it right this week, I swear. It's week number 5. It's the 6th week we're doing it, but it's week number 5 of the challenge. There we go, I got it, fine. Last week, we opened ourselves a Duel Devastator, which was amazing. Finally having access to a full sideboard, but also getting some real power into our deck in form of more hand traps was awesome. But we are still after quite a few cards to finish out the core of our main deck, most namely the remaining invoked monsters. So, for this week, we got ourselves some packs of Battles of Legend Armageddon. In here, which you are now going to have to watch me suffer to open again. Oh no, actually, this one came off way easier than the other ones. I'm much happier about that. This one has most of the invoked fusion monsters, namely Kaliaga and a few others. I think it has all of them actually. We want a Raijin, we want a Kaliaga, and we want the fire one, whatever that one's called. Purgatrio, that's it. It also has invocation at a super rare. Or, no, sorry, a secret rare. Oof. But more importantly, it actually has Cross Sheep as a super rare. And Cross Sheep will help us perform a very fun-to-do combo that might push us into the positives when it comes to our win-loss ratio now. So, as you know, our budget is still 20. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then let's take 7 and 8. Thank you, Magical Merchant. We're going to move this to the side. Now you've seen that it was indeed sealed. And we are going to go into 8 packs of Battles of Legend Armageddon. Now, you might actually hear my cat during this recording, and let me just take my camera here. If it could focus. I feel like this is necessary for a Yu-Gi-Oh channel. She's having fun in the box all this came in. Just so you know. I actually managed to recenter that fairly well. Good job, me. Alright, without no further ado, if the kitty could stop being a cat for a moment, let's go into Battles of Legend Armageddon. Let's go. Oh, well, okay. Invoked Elysium. Unfortunately, this is one of the really bad ones, because it needs an invoked monster, as well as a monster that was special summoned from the extra deck. But it counts as all elements, and we can banish an invoked card in our graveyard and banish our opponent's field that has the same typing. Not great, but it'll exist. A Malefic Paradigm Dragon. Ross Disciple. Utopia the Lightning is interesting, because if we gained access to a normal Utopia, we could potentially run this. I'm actually going to keep this in like the extra pile, right? And then Fossil Warrior Skull Knights, which does us nothing. I'm actually going to keep that there, because there is a chance if we at some point get a Utopia that we could actually play the Lightning. I don't think we would, but it has potential, and potential goes in the potential pile, you know? Right, pack number 2. Salamangreat Gazelle, the card that never shows up if you're playing salads. Appliancer Capascale. Appliancer... What? Copy Bonkle. I love that name. Appliancer Dried Drake. And Specimen Inspection. Again, more fossil cards. Fortunately, fossils is not what we want. We want the other archetype that's in this pack. Come on. It'd be nice to not have a complete dud of a pack opening here, but who knows. Numeragate Trini. Secure Gardener. Black Whirlwind. Elemental Hero Shining Flare Wingman. Back in the day, this was a cool boss monster. And Armored White Bear. That does not look like a bear. It looks more like a boar. Well, yeah, this is looking like a dud so far. Utopia the Lightning is cool, but mighty unnecessary. This was a very weird pack to open. Let's toss it to the side. Let's go. It is really hard to read these. Numeron Wall. Dragon Buster Destruction Sword. So if we get a Union Carrier, we can do a Buster Lock. Interesting. Super All-In. Junk Anchor. Dark Spell Regeneration. Dud, dud, dud. We have 2 maybes. You know, I don't think a Buster Lock is really playable in Shaddolls, but it's a cool card to have nonetheless, right? Oh, upside down. Appliancer Beaker Bunkle, Brotherhood of the Firefist Lion Emperor, Afterglow, Sunlight Wolf, and... Artifact Ignition. Damn it, it's not the secret rare we wanted. That could have been Invocation. That would have been the best. Okay. Yeah, let's just keep digging in. We gotta get in there. Gotta get in there. Alright. Obedience Schooled. Goyo Guardian. This was so good back in the day that it got banned really quickly. Topologic Zeroboros. We've been up against this card a couple of times, and I was thinking if this card could legitimately be playable in our Shaddoll deck, because there are multiple times where we could get 4 monsters onto the field to realistically go into this, but I don't know if it's really doable at the moment, and I don't really know if we want to sacrifice that much to go into Zeroboros, but it's a possibility. It's going into the maybe pile for sure. Goyo Defender. And number C92 Hard Earth Chaos Dragon. 4 level 10 monsters. Jesus. Well, we got 2 packs left and not much to show for it this week. But we've had incredible luck so far with everything else we've opened. So to be perfectly frank, I can't really be upset. Alright. Pack number 7. Focus. Thank you. Super All In. Number 1 Numero Gate. Another Appliancer. Number 3, Cicada King. Chimera Tech Mega Fleet Dragon. In Master Rule 4, this card was super good because it just snatched whatever your opponent had in the extra monster zone. It was really good. Nowadays, not so much. Trishula, you have not let me down in the past. How about you don't let me down now, huh? Is this going to be the first week of complete duds? That would suck. 4 Mud Skipper. Galaxy Worm. Oh, there we go. Thank you. Invoked Purgatrio, or Purgatrio. Alistair the Invoker plus a Fire Monster. This card gains 200 attack for each card, not each monster, each card your opponent controls. Can attack all monsters your opponent controls once each. If this card attacks a defense position monster and inflict piercing damage. So you can get Purgatrio onto the board, use Invocation's effect to get Alistair back, use Alistair to pump this by 1,000 attack, and beat into everything for a 1-turn knockout, hopefully. This is definitely going into the deck. Another Dragon Buster, and Fossil Dragon Skullgar. Well, it was a bit of a dud, unfortunately. We only really got 1 card that for sure is going into the deck. But on the other hand, this is a very good card that can hopefully help us end some matches now that we have access to it. And then we have these 3 cards that may see use at some point. I'm going to keep them in mind at least. I'm going to put them in our binder for the time being. And then we got a whole load of crap that we're not going to use. So, unfortunate, but for the time being, let's add Purgatrio to the deck, and I will see you guys in our duels.
Hey, it's me again, Purple Screen Man. So, last couple of weeks, we have been dueling on Dueling Book to finally get into the ranked duels to climb onto the self-proclaimed King of Games title. However, during the last week or so, Dueling Book has been having extreme issues. Everything from lag to constant disconnects to God knows what else. Simply put, there was no way for me to record the matches and give you any sort of dueling content whatsoever. So, in order to remedy this, instead of going back to Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro, which we did for the first couple of episodes, I have opted to instead change to Yu-Gi-Oh! Nexus, which is the second browser-based system people use, that, fortunately, also happens to have a ranked ladder. Unfortunately, this does mean that we're starting from 0 again, but on the other hand, I don't mind too much. We didn't really get that far on Dueling Book, so the change to me is fine. It should also be noted that this is an automatic simulator, so rules is applied by itself. So there's no more Nibiru and Winda screw-ups, or Widow Anchor screw-ups, because I did a lot of those, because I don't know how the hell the cards work. Anyway, I'm going to cut right back into our first duel at Dueling Nexus for our first 5 preliminary games before we're giving our ranking. Off to me. Off to me indeed. Welcome to our first ranked duel, and we're going up against Metaphys Control, which is essentially a control deck that revolves around banishing their own cards as well as our cards, ensuring we don't get anything done. Our opponent opens up the nuts, going into Dimensional Fissure as well as one of their Metaphys cards in order to banish any monster that hits the field ever, which, in case you can't figure out by the fact that we're playing Shaddolls, is incredibly bad for us. Essentially, this means we are locked out of doing anything useful whatsoever. Any monster that we attempt to send to the graveyard is instead banished. In this case, our opponent activates their trap card, which is essentially their control tool, and we attempt to just drop something on the board that we can fight with, but then we realize that due to Dimensional Fissure, anything we send is sent to the graveyard. He simply discards one of his Metaphys cards from the deck in order to banish one of our monsters, and we're kind of screwed. We activate Magical Meltdown to draw into an Aleister at least, summoning Aleister, using our Invocation to go into Purgatorio and attempt to go in for some damage. We activate Invocation to draw Aleister back in case we need to reuse it, because in this case, Aleister is one of the few cards we can actually use being banished, because we can keep recurring it and keep getting a fusion monster onto the board. Our opponent, on the other hand, has a plan for this and simply can special summon back their little dragon that I can't remember the name of for the life of me. They activate the trap card again, simply banishing our Purgatorio, and at this point we are very screwed. We attempt to go into Aleister again, going into Invocation, but since we don't have a dark target for Invocation to use, we have to beat down with Aleister. Ooh boy! Our opponent taking a very long time to act, as you can see, but then decides to chain into one of his Metaphys dragons, I can't remember what that is, changing our monster to defense position by banishing 3 cards off the top of his deck. His Pendulum Dragon comes back in again, and he just combos off, banishes our entire board, and we scoop. Game 2, we side in our Twin Twisters, hoping the fact that we can actually stop him from setting up his board, hopefully. Our first turn, we do get into Winda. Our Hedgehog gets ashed, unfortunately, but so we... Oh no, our Skomata gets ashed. But we instead draw Wendy to our hand, setting Twin Twister. He goes into Asmith... I can't pronounce that card whatsoever. Goes into his dragon, and he begins again. Banishing 3 cards, thankfully not hitting a Metaphys monster this time, meaning he doesn't get a draw off of it. We draw into another Twin Twinnies, which doesn't really do us anything. We decide to set Dragon, use Winda to punch over our opponent's tiny little dragon. And then we go back into the world again. At this point, we're looking decent with the fact that he doesn't have a way to banish cards, but on the other hand, it is going to get bad when he hits us with a Harpy's Feather Duster. At this point, we decide to just Twin Twister and get rid of both of his cards just in case, but it turns out he has another one. He goes into Aloof Lupine, dropping 2 Necrophases, meaning 10 cards at the top of our decks are going to get banished, which is highly unfortunate. Lupine hits Dragon. We opt not to use its effect because we don't exactly want him to get Lupine back to the hand at this point. And here comes the trap card we needed to get rid of. His loop continues, our Winda gets banished, and at this point we are essentially screwed. If he gets into any way to banish all of our cards, we lose. And he can. Turn over, turn over, turn over, we're screwed. D. Fisher comes down as well, and at this point we just know that there is no recovery from this, essentially. We take our next draw just in case, as we get one more turn to live, but as you will soon see, he goes into Tenyi. We go into Magical Meltdown, which could actually save us here if we didn't banish our Invocation, sorry. I add an Aleister, I attempt to be Aleister. If we can go to Purgatory, we win, but it turns out there's no Invocation in our deck and we scoop. Game number 2, we are going up against Phantom Abyss, which is the only thing that I can really call this deck, because I'm not entirely sure what it is, but it runs Burning Abyss and the Phantom, what is it, like the Phantom Armor and the Phantom stuff. I can't remember what they're called. Bardiche is one of them. Phantom Knights, that's it. Hey, look at me, I remember things. So our opponent starts off with the Burning Abyss combos and attempting to go as far as they possibly can, dumping more and more Burning Abyss cards as they tend to do. We do get the chance to ash one of them, so we go ahead and do that to make sure he can't draw into a lot. And then a Phantom Knight comes out, and I'm sitting there like, oh! Bardiche hits the board, which is going to fetch him the boot. Oh, sorry, he actually drops the cape in order to set a card face down. He then banishes the cape to draw into boots, activating the trap card, special summoning the boots, banishing the, I believe they're called gloves, don't remember. Dropping the wings, which I had never seen before now, so that's interesting. Going into Nightmare Phoenix, turn 1, Question mark. Banishing the boots in order to draw into wings from his deck to his hand, setting 1, setting 2, and ending his turn. On our turn, we immediately realize that we have a lot of threats to deal with here, so we simply set the dragon, use our Super Poly, dumping our Shaddoll Incarnation as the cost in order to get into Winda, stealing his Bardiche. Dragon allows us to palp one of the back row. We choose the middle one, which turns out to be wings that he places onto his Phoenix, making sure that it cannot be destroyed by battle, and it gains 500 attack permanently. He goes ahead and returns his Bardiche to the board once again, thanks to the Trap Cards effect, which sort of came underneath me, but we go with Winda, we go in, and we punch it to banish it from the graveyard. We then simply end our turn with our Shaddoll Incarnation set and our Winda on the board. Winda essentially shuts down Burning Abyss completely. Our opponent goes into Harpy's Feather Duster, so we actually go ahead and we activate the El Shaddoll Fusion, which drops a Winda from the board, allows us to draw a card, and gives us back an El Shaddoll Fusion. On our opponent's turn, he normal summons an Ash Blossom in order to go into Predaplant Anaconda, supposedly bringing out Dragoon, but he forgets that Winda's still in play, and he can't fusion, or he can't special summon again. Our opponent, then realizing this probably, immediately scoops. Going into game number 2, our opening hand is equally as strong as the last time, pretty much. We have a Squamata Magical Meltdown, which is good to have in our starting hand. Our opponent starts off by going into the Burning Abyss combo, once again special summoning every single Burning Abyss he has in his hand. And it looks very similar to the first game, to be frank. He goes back to special summoning all of his Burning Abyss cards that I can't remember the name of. Farfa's one of them. That's, that's the top thing. He sets 3, and then goes into Bardiche once again, special summoning back his thing, sets a 4th card, which is obviously a Phantom Knight card, activating Cloak, activating his Trap card, which I believe he meant to do afterwards, because now he has Boots, but regardless. Boots comes out from a special summon due to the fact that he has a Phantom Knight card. Predaplant Anaconda hits the board, and this time he actually does go into Dragoon. Shocking nobody, I suppose. Dragoon hits the board, and he's set himself up pretty decently. If we didn't have Super Poly. Super Poly basically screws him up completely. Right, we set ourselves a dragon. We activate Super Poly immediately, discarding a beast that we don't need in order to get rid of his Dragoon and special summoning Winda. Squamata's effect is about to activate, which goes through. We dump ourselves a dragon, popping a back row, just to make sure that he doesn't do any shenanigans. But shenanigans he doesn't do. That was a Fog Blade. I'm not entirely sure why he did not activate that, but regardless, we go into a Magical Meltdown, attempting to wait for our opponent once more. This is kind of the negative about using Nexus as opposed to anything else. But we do get into an Aleister. We go into the battle phase and beat over his Anaconda, making sure that he couldn't potentially have a second play there. And we simply pass our turn with Aleister, Invocation, and Wendy in hand. Our opponent activates Fogblade in the graveyard to get Boots back. Boots gets special summoned. And here comes Bardiche. So Bardiche drops another Cloak. He sets a card from his deck. Sets a card from his hand. Cloak activates. You can probably see where this is going. At least he has used his special summon for the turn already, so he isn't able to do... Oh, no, sorry, that was his special summon for the turn. So now he just has 2 Boots sitting there, sort of chilling. At this point, he just ends his turn, which is very strange. Looking at our graveyard, we don't really have anything available, so we simply set a Falco, go into battle, and beat over one of his feet. The whole reason we do this is to attempt to avoid if he uses wings onto his Bardiche to trick us, which turns out he actually did have wings. It does mean that Bardiche can actually attack over us next turn. He also has a Fogblade set, which is unfortunate because that means our Winda does not get to attack. We go into main phase 2. We pop off our Do we actually? I don't remember. Yes, we do pop off our invocation eventually, going into another window using the cards in our hand, which is really strange. But since we now have a new window, the old window's effect no longer applies to us, so we are able to special summon again. Window unfortunately gets banished due to Farfa, which is unfortunate. Our opponent then begins to climb once again, and this time he pops off completely, going into... I can't remember the name of that specific card, but I know he goes into Rebellion Dragon eventually. As you can see, his combo just builds and builds and builds, and we are kind of out of resources at this point. Falco returns itself, fortunately, and we still have a set Squamata to deal with a single card. Here comes the Rebellion Dragon. He drops himself some gloves, sets a card, which is going to be Rank Up, or Phantom Knight's Rank Up, or whatever the Rank Up spell is called, which essentially gives him the upgraded version of Rebellion Dragon, and at that point we are all kinds of screwed. Our opponent begins to beat down in his battle phase, knowing that he has essentially won at this point. We activate Squamata's effect to pop Bardiche. This does give us one more turn to live, and our top deck needs to be absolutely legendary to get out of this. We do get Wendy back at the end phase, and we draw into Twin Twisters, which, surprisingly, doesn't do anything for us. Phantom Knight's Breaksword it is. There it is, the rank up magic. Breaksword is the one I was assuming. So he banishes a card from his graveyard, and he ranks up his Rebellion Dragon. At this point, we're screwed, we surrender, we go Game 3. Game 3 is a much, much better start as we go off into a Foolish Burial that immediately gets Ash Blossomed, but we don't really care, activating an El Shaddoll Fusion on a turn going into Winda. Winda, of course, going into the effects of Squamata and Wendy. Not really that they cooperate with one another, but we drop a Hedgehog in order to get something back to our hand, and we set ourselves a Dragon. We decide on actually drawing a Dragon to our hand as well, and then passing the turn. This means our opponent can no longer use his Burning Abyss cards because they cannot be special summoned in chain, and he simply concedes, giving us a win. In game number 3, we're going up against the ill-fated Sky Strikers. Now, of course, we're not going to be able to pull off the same mistakes we have the last couple of episodes, but regardless, we start off by going into Magical Meltdown, going into Aleister, but Aleister unfortunately gets Gammaed. We instead decide to go into Shaddoll Fusion, going into Winda, activating only Falco's effect because Dragon doesn't really have a target to pop, setting a card face down and ending our turn. Our opponent, on the other hand, decides to simply set 2 and pass, so at the current moment we have no idea what we're up against. We go in Wenda for 2,200 points of damage, and we pass turn with a Foolish in hand. Our opponent then activates Area 0, which now we know they're playing Sky Strikers. He looks for cards, and he manages to get himself a Widow Anchor by breaking his Shark Cannon. We go into Foolish Burial, dropping Dragon, in order to bait out a Ray from the Area 0. Which means when we pop it, he gets to special summon a Sky Striker, and we do this on purpose, and he pokes us in the chat saying, oh, thanks, and we just go, yeah, thanks indeed, and we pop a Super Poly using his Ray in order to get into another window. We go in for 4,400 points of damage that he has little to do to stop, and we pass on to our opponent. Now, we know he has one Widow Anchor, what we don't know is that he has another one set, so unfortunately, he actually has an out to the idea that I had in mind. He is forced to use both of his Widow Anchors in order to break both the windows by crashing them, but we do get a Shaddoll Fusion back from all of this. Our opponent then simply ends turn, and we draw into an Ash Blossom at the wrong turn. We could have ended this game easily if we had drawn any other monster. He simply passes the turn, and we draw into a Falco, which we just decide to set and pass on that. Our opponent then activates Jamming Waves in order to break the Falco, but Falco is reoccurring, so we actually get it back. But our opponent chains a Shark Cannon, which steals the card from the graveyard before it can special summon itself. He goes into Effect Veiler Normal Summoning, getting into a Nightmare Phoenix. This allows us to drop into Shaddoll Fusion, which we decide to go for a Construct now that we know what he's doing. Construct effect activates and Ariel's effect activates. We remove a Ray and both the Widow Anchors from his graveyard. We use our Construct to bash over the Nightmare Phoenix. Apologies. Sending Reshaddoll Incarnation to the graveyard, of course. Then Multi-Roll comes down, and we know what's about to happen. We hope for a top deck of the monster, and we draw another Ash Blossom. Unfortunate. So, we simply bash into the set Effect Veiler, and we pass our turn. Our opponent, 2 cards in hand, and Multi-Roll set doesn't really have that many ways out, but he manages to draw into Hornet Drones. Hornet Drones will allow him to start his Sky Striker combo, as he goes into Kagari. Kagari attempts to land an attack on us, but we banish the turtle, making sure that he can't drop anything into the graveyard for free. He then goes... Oh, not Kagari, sorry. I'm so bad at Sky Striker names. My god, Kagari is the red one, Shizuku's the blue one, and God knows what the green one is. I'm just gonna call them their color from now on. He gets his Area 0 back, which we decide to Ash now that we have 2 of them in hand to make sure he can't go into anything extra. He goes into Kaina, which is the yellow one, which prevents our construct from attacking for the next turn. Then he goes into Sky Striker blue, and simply passes the turn on that. He sets 2 cards thanks to multi-roll, and Shizuku, aka Blue, gets to draw him an Afterburners. We draw into Squamata, which would have helped to do 2 turns ago, but we simply decide to set it, and since Construct cannot attack, we are simply passing the turn back to our opponent. The opponent immediately goes off with Afterburners, popping our Construct, which is fine. Magical Mantle also gets popped, but we get a Shaddoll Fusion back. He uses Shark Cannon in an attempt to bring Construct to his side of the field when we activate Reshaddoll Incarnation, flipping our Squamata, destroying Shizuku. Ogre comes out, destroying Squamata in the process, and he has another Drones set, which lets him go back into his token, special summoning Red, grabbing a card from his graveyard, which is going to be Widow Anchor, I believe. Goes into blue, blue ends turn, blue gets no card from the deck because we decided to ash this one as well. Multi-roll, however, does get to set cards from the grave. And we draw into Ghost Ogre. Ghost Ogre does not help us in the slightest. We activate Shaddoll Fusion, it gets ashed. We just have to pass. There's nothing we can do there. Area 0 attempts to pop a card, and he finds Afterburners, which he grabs to his hand, unfortunately. He attacks with Shizuku. Shizuku deals a little bit of damage to us, and he passes turn. We set the Hedgehog we just draw, hoping that he actually crashes into it. He goes into Afterburners, but he pops his own Shizuku, only to follow it up with Battle Protection. I think that was a misclick from his part. I'm not entirely sure what he's doing there. Area 0 doesn't find anything. He goes into battle phase. Shizuku breaks our Hedgehog. Hedgehog gives us a Shaddoll Fusion once again. He passes turn, activates multi-roll, which we actually Ghost Ogre, giving him nothing. We activate our Shaddoll Fusion, knowing he does not have another Ash, thank God. We decide this time to go into Shekinaga, because having a negate may come in handy. Dropping Squamata and Mathematician, activated Squamata's effect, but Squamata gets Shark Cannoned, but our effect still goes off. Meaning we set ourselves a Beast just in case we need it. We also decide to set our El Shaddoll Fusion, then punch over Shizuku, leaving him at 700 life points. Now we're looking good. Activating Area 0, attempting to find any Sky Striker, failing, unfortunately, he sets one and passes. We simply flip open, Beast, draw 2 cards, go into combat, destroy Squamata, and go in for game. Or so we thought, because here comes a goddamn Widow Anchor. He attempts to take our Shekinaga, but we simply fuse it away for another Shekinaga, punch him for game, and that is game 1. Game number 2, and this time we've cited in most of the back row hate that we can get, as well as DD Crow and any other graveyard hate that we might want to deal with. Our opponent decides to go first and does have a Ray in his opening hand, summoning Ray, going into Shizuku. And yeah, that's about it. He sets one, Shizuku's going to drag a card to his hand, which is going to be multi-roll. On our turn, we decide to attempt an Aliester once again, but as you can probably guess with our Aliester luck these days, it gets ashed. We should probably put in Called by the Grave to the main deck at this point, because it happens every time. With that in mind, we have nothing else in our hand to play, so we simply pass over to our opponent. Our opponent, after deliberating for about 50 years, decides to actually drop his Kagari? Is that the green one? Sky Striker green. Goes into our Aliester, and Aliester is destroyed, sending Widow Anchor to the grave. Sky Striker red comes out, drawing back the Widow Anchor, but we decide to DD Crow the Widow Anchor to make sure that he doesn't gain anything from it. He then activates Shark Cannon, banishing our DD Crow, which I'm still debating why he did not just choose to banish Aliester, because that would have been better. Back into Sky Striker blue, popping a Pot of Avarice to return every single one of his cards back into the deck to draw 2. At this point, we are looking fairly bad, but we have many, many outs in a duel like this. Shizuku's effect activates, drawing him another Widow Anchor. At this point, we simply set our Hedgehog and pass the turn. Our opponent now has 7 cards in their hand and decides to play Foolish Burial Goods, which is going to drop another Sky Striker spell to the graveyard. Multi-roll comes out, which means our opponent is preparing and going into Sky Striker Red, once again getting Widow Anchor back to his hand. In the battle phase, he battles into Hedgehog, Hedgehog giving us a Shaddoll fusion. Our opponent then decides to set 3 and do the move that they always do back into Shizuku. Shizuku then draws some cards to his hand once again, which is going to be Afterburners. We activate our Shaddoll fusion, which actually goes through this time, and we decide to go for a Shekinaga. We drop ourselves Mathematician and Ariel to banish 3 spells from his graveyard, meaning he needs to pop more spells in order to use Widow Anchor. He goes for Impermanence, which hits our Shekinaga, which is fine for the time being. We set Wendy, we set Super Poly, we punch Shizuku in the face, and we pass turn. Our opponent then, unknowingly I suppose, activates Afterburners, and then times out, giving us a win. Match number 4, and we're going up to what I can only describe being Mekk-Knights or Orcust or something, I'm not entirely sure. We start off by popping in a Lore of Darkness, going into Aliester, going into Invocation, going into Mekk-Knights, getting back our Trick Clown in defense position. We then activate Invocation as always, drawing Aliester back to our hand and ending the turn. Our opponent starts off incredibly strong by dropping Lightning Storm, which we are unfortunately forced to negate by dropping Pot of Avarice. This means our opponent now has free reign to do whatever the hell they feel like, and oh boy do they. They start off by immediately going into their Mekk-Knights, which can be special summoned, unfortunately for us, and then banishing themselves for a turn for additional effects. Essentially, they recycle themselves, getting more of them. And it's going to be quite apparent that he is going to overwhelm us very, very quickly. He goes into the Gursu Knight that I never remember the name of. I believe it's just Gursu, the Mekk-Knight or whatever it is. And he begins his combo once. I was about to say once more, but it's. I've seen this combo a few times, and it just hurts knowing that we have no Nibiru to stop them. Dark Legacy Succession comes in after Lib summoning the World Arm. Or Armor, I think it is, but it's just an arm sticking out of the ground. Come on, guys. Don't be like that. Also, his name is Yamete. Regardless, he goes into his Link 3. The combo restarts over. Lib is going to be summoned back again. Oh, sorry, not Lib. It's going to be Parallel Exceed, which is going to pull our card back to the hand. And he has 2 Parallel Exceeds. Fun, isn't it? At this point, it is looking incredibly bleak for us, and we know that there's not that many ways we can break this board. He goes into Access Code Talker, which is like our worst nightmare because we can do nothing to respond to it. He buffs it up to 5,300 attack. We just decide to pull it back, but since he banished a Link monster, he has over 3 attacks to use, and we just bite the dust in game 1. Game number 2, we're again going to attempt to go first, now siding in Pankratops, hoping we can do something with it if needed. Hoping he doesn't get combo on turn 1, essentially, but our only card we can do is set 1 Pass, which, yeah, you can take a guess that that is not going to be enough in this game. We have no chance as this combo once again starts back up. We have 0 interruption in our hand, unfortunately, even though I sided in all of it. But, yeah. His combo pops up once again using Parallel Exceeds and Mekk-Knights. He does the same thing again. He's going to get into Access Code Talker. We have nothing to stop it with. It is a good game. For our last match of today, we're going up against the dreaded Mystic Mine. We start off by doing our Shaddoll Fusion, going into Winda, activating both Beast and Wendy at the same time, trying to get as much as we can. And then we get hit by a Sphere Mode, which I was not expecting. So we activate our Incarnation to get Winda back onto the board to prematurely make sure that he doesn't do anything stupid. He places Field Barrier and Mystic Mine, and I'm thinking to myself, can I out this? Do I even have a way of outing Mystic Mine with Field Barrier in the deck? And no. Pre-side, I don't. There is nothing I can do to break that board, so I just scoop up and go to game 2. In game number 2, we side in every single back row hate that we could possibly get, starting off with a Mathematician and a Twin Twister in hand, which is good, dropping Squamata, dropping Wendy, getting Beast onto the board, and passing our turn. We know that he's not going to summon anything stupid, so we just simply let it go. He plays Soul Absorption, which is an interesting spell since when cards get banished, he gains 500 life points. He plays Golden Sarcophagus, which is a card I have not seen in years. That was played back when I used to play. Right, so he activates Necrophage, which banishes the top 5 cards of our deck, as we've seen before, gaining him a total of 5,000 life points. But you don't win games by gaining life points, do you? We flip open Beast in an attempt to draw 2 cards, and I'm thinking his back row is Metaphys, which it turns out it is. Shocking surprise, I know. This is going to go into Mystic Mine, but we still get to draw cards because it's still in the same chain. We activate Twin Twinnies by pitching a Falco, destroying both of his back row, activating Magical Meltdown, getting our Aliester, normal summoning the Aliester, gaining our Invocation, but we don't have a light currently, so we're sort of sitting stuck. Beast goes in and destroys Electromagnetic Turtle? That's my card! Unfortunately, we go in for another attack, which we could have used in order to create Mekk-Knights, but we were a bit stupid. Regardless, he sets 1. We have the chance to chain, but we do not. I don't know what we could have chained. And we draw another Twin Twister, which is awesome. We simply, without really doing anything else, we get rid of Aliester, setting another Beast, and then attacking his face down. His face down being Absolute King Blackjack, which I did not even know was a card. He's playing so many things that I have legitimately never seen in my entire life, and it's just interesting, right? He activates its effect in order to, I believe it was banish... Yeah, he could have banished something on the top of the deck if he had the chance. There we go. Oh no, he gets to look for a trap card and then set it if it exists, and he sets a Magical Cylinder. Interesting. Our opponent then drops another Sphere mode on us, which is awful, and he goes into Left Arm Offering, but we decide to bring a Beast back with Incarnation just so we have the card draw to keep throwing threats at him. Then, he times out. He draws Mystic Mine, Necrophage gets activated, and yeah, he just ups and leaves. I would have included the last part there, but unfortunately the software crashed, but rest assured he timed out, unfortunately, meaning we don't actually get a win. We get a tie, or, you know, a bye, so to speak, which is unfortunate, which this week we yet again end at 0 star chips. It's really unfortunate that we have to keep switching systems because of technical issues, and yeah, I apologize for this. I don't mean to constantly hop back and forth between, you know, Dueling Book and Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro and now Yu-Gi-Oh! Nexus. I apologize a lot, right? What I want to do continuing the series is most likely going to be Nexus, because it's been the one where I feel it's most secure to play on, because there's still ranked modes so people care about what they're playing, but it's also automatic, so I don't have to care about, you know, rules disputes and such. On the other hand, though, next week we're going to have to start looking for some real power to add to the deck. The next thing we are going after is going to be, first of all, still finishing the Invoked Core. We're missing about 3 cards, I believe, and getting another Invocation would be the... Oh, we need one. Having one is so bad, because if we get rid of it, we can't access anything from Aliester. It sucks. Then we also need to get into Predaplant Verde Anaconda, which is going to be super important for us, because that is our key way into Dragoon. And Dragoon is a beast. Regardless, despite all the technical issues and mumbo-jumbo, I'd like to thank you for watching, if you managed to watch this far. I know this video is really long, but editing the Dual Nexus matches takes a while, because it doesn't have a replay feature, so I need to record them live, and then I need to cut out most of when the opponent is thinking and such. Thank you for watching, and as always, stay safe out there.